What's up? What's up? Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your beloved host. I'm the leader. I am the man. You ever read Edda Dorpa? It's about me. I'm the man. Tony's like, look at me like he's like, yeah, you're the man, you're the man. Whatever. Okay, well, anyways, yeah, Tony's not enthused because he never is, and Anthony's just a spiteful little meanie. But that's just how it goes, man. I'm special. I'm special. Banjo knows.
Very interesting.
Yeah, Banjo's the only one who knows.
Because he's an animal, and animals are better than y'all. They're better than people, dude. They don't judge you. They don't,
They don't hold you accountable, and they're not.
Thank God.
They're not capable of understanding your flaws as a human being. They're great.
Let's get him
Easy
up
to
here.
get along with. I like animals.
Let's get him up here and have him sing your praises then. Come on, Banjo.
No animal ever criticized me.
There you go. There it is. He sang it. So yeah. So what we got here tonight? We got a story. We got a show. I mean, obviously by the title, it's going to be pretty interesting. I've been intrigued by this subject since I was young, and now I got a chance to talk about these things. Is that we got 2 or 3 stories, but we're giving this one out because it's really weird and it's almost Halloween. So we thought, you know what? Let's just drop a bunch of shows. And let's make it happen for Halloween so everybody can be, happy Halloweeny. So what we have here is we have the Patreon. Join the Patreon, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 tier. Gives you a better level of swag bag. It's a pretty awesome deal. I think it's cool. Banjo likes it. Banjo thinks it's great. So does Panzer. I don't know why you guys hate everybody.
I don't hate everybody. Just some people.
That's crazy.
I hate everybody.
See? Exactly.
Well, that's just lazy.
And
you gotta have standards for your hate.
Our pig. So here's what happened. Truffles, our pig, we caught him playing with a Ouija board and we told him, no, bad Truffles. It turns out he was trying to summon the ghost of Arnold Ziffel. Somebody was showing him Green Acres, my brother. And he really likes to watch that show, and he stares at the television every day and watches Green Acre reruns and then I had to tell him, "Lay, buddy, Arnold Ziffel's long gone." And he was so distraught that he pooped and peed everywhere. So it was like a normal day.
Yeah.
Nothing changed.
So anyways, folks, Arnold Ziffel was the fictional character on Green Acres, just so you know. All right. So anyways, folks, what we got tonight, anything else we got to talk about? PRT, Paranormal Roundtable, Josh Turner, PRT, or is it Josh Turner, PRTpodcast.com?
Yeah.
Send me your stories. If you got something you want to talk about, we're going to be doing a live. We're going to be doing one record, then a live, then a record, then a live, all the way to Halloween, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff. We're moving, shaking, getting things done. We're shaking and baking, man. And so I'm happy. I'm excited about this new direction we're headed in. We're going to be doing the giveaways on the live, so be staying tuned for that. It should be great. And so what we got tonight, though, we got the Duende King. The reason that it's called that, and you'll find out. This story came to us by one of our listeners who was listening to the show, and he said, "Hey," he's like, "I have a story to tell you." And this came from one of his uncles. Well, I guess 3 of his uncles, really, but one of them in particular says where they're from is the state of Campeche. Sorry, and there's a city there named Candelaria. Now, what's interesting about Candelaria is when I was a kid, there was a Candelaria that was named after that. And the people were originally from there, and they lived right outside of Marfa and just across the border. And my grandfather used to take me through Pinto Canyon, the Chinati Mountains, and we would go to Candelaria and stay. There was a haunted church that was defunct there. It was just ruins. And it was a mission that had been founded way back in like 1702. And then there was a haunted cemetery where people claimed that they would see these, for all intents and purposes, would be like little tiny dogmen, little coyote-looking deals. So interesting, weird, wild stuff. But yeah, I remember going there as a kid and playing around. I found the biggest rattlesnake I'd ever seen, and I was poking at it with a stick like a little dummy, like a 9-year-old would. Because you're dumb at that age. You don't know. And so I ran in there and I'm like, hey, Papa, I found a rattlesnake. And he's like, what? He flipped out and wouldn't let me go back outside. And when I snuck out, he spanked me. So I learned my lesson. Luckily, I didn't get bit. But so does anybody not know what a duende is? I mean, y'all two both know what it is. But the people, if you don't know what it is, they're these little diminutive, like monitos, as we say in Spanish, little men. They typically have the demeanor, like they're cantankerous little old people. Yeah. They look like little people, like little children, but with old men faces. Like think of Walter Matthau on, Miley Cyrus's body, And Miley Cyrus looks very androgynous, so you can imagine that. Or Katy Perry, another little androgynous person.
Or an angry little Keebler elf.
Yeah, a little angry Keebler elf. But they're malicious in a lot of ways, and they're feared. People in Mexico are absolutely afraid of them. They can give you the ojo, the patrica. They can put a curse on you. They're scary. You don't want to mess with them, dude. But there was a guy down there in Candelaria who was known as a curandera. Curandera, putting that sort of like the way Anthony always says. What does he say, Tony? He says, a curandera is only cool until you make them mad.
Yeah, and then she becomes a bruja.
A bruja, yeah. But this dude was a brujo, I mean, he was a warlock. And they called him the Duende King, El Rey de Duende, And so whenever you went to this guy, you only went to this guy if you like one guy. And now that's funny. I was bringing up the rattlesnake for a reason because, there was a guy his brother was bitten by a rattlesnake. And so what this guy did, his name was Carlito, and he took his brother, Pablo, to this dude. And this dude said, yeah, I got you. And he got the venom out, gave him some salve, and then said some prayers. And he saved him. He was on the verge of death in the middle of nowhere. And there wasn't a good hospital out there where he was at. He was way out in the bush. And this is in the Yucatan, right? Jungle everywhere. And he had gotten bitten by a venomous snake. He couldn't even tell what kind it was. It wasn't a rattlesnake, but it was a snake. And he said, my brother, and this story was told to us by the guy that told us is Marco. Marco told us his stories. Thank you, Marco, for sending these to me. And he said, you guys do a lot of stories from Mexico. And he goes, I lived in Mexico and I want to tell you this story. And he said that what happened was this guy told him, you got to come back here for the next 3 weeks. And this was very specific. And he told him, he says, you need to bring me. His name was Eduardo, this guy. And they claim that this dude was over 100 years old. Like they don't really know, but they estimated that he was probably 130 to 140 years old. How the hell? Their parents knew him. Their grandparents knew him. He looked like he was 50 and he had never really aged, which was bizarre. But they knew that you didn't mess with this guy. And apparently on the full moon of every month, he was extremely strong and he was known to go into people's houses and do things. We'll get into that in a minute. One of the things that this dude, Eduardo, did, he would tell people very specific instructions that were damn near impossible to follow. You ever seen that episode of Dave Chappelle? That's what I thought about when he was telling me that. And he says, I need you to go and get me some Cambodian breast milk.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I need a left-handed golf clubs from a midget or whatever.
Yeah. I need a sugar cookie.
I need a sugar cookie. And he would just go limp.
This is crazy.
This is crazy. I didn't come here to be a sugar cookie getter. But it was like making the band. Remember that?
Yeah.
P. Diddy. It's probably P. Diddy was, baby oiling them, everybody. I don't know.
P. Diddly.
P. Diddly poodly poof. But, what ended up happening, this guy, he would tell them, some weird stuff like I need curdled goat milk and you need to bring it back on every Tuesday. Just weird stuff, Well, he told this guy's brother that this guy knew very well. He told Carlito, he said, you tell your brother. He said, he told Pablo, he said, give your brother the instructions. And it was like, okay. And so this guy was told, bring a bag of 6 oranges to put at this altar that he had to what looked like a mummified corpse of someone who he claimed was his grandfather But this thing looked ancient. It was very old. I was told this, and I don't know if this is true. It could be complete speculation, fabrication, whatever. But years later, when this guy eventually got ran out of town, who knows where he is now? He's not there anymore. But that mummy was tested, and it came back like several hundred years old.
Wow.
And he claimed that was his grandfather. No, he could be mentiroso. That's lying in Spanish. Or he could be a vampire. I mean, who the heck knows? We don't know. I mean, but there are some weird things. But he had this ability, and if you went to him for help, you were basically making a deal with the devil, and everybody knew. Now, he wouldn't necessarily put curses on people. It was always in the guise of, I helped you, you need to follow this information to a T, and if you don't follow it to a T, then I'm open to, whatever happens to you, because you didn't follow it. And so a lot of people believe his power came from his association with a race of beings known as the Duende. These individual group of beings, the individuals of this group were about 2.5 feet tall. They were a little bigger than these. They weren't these little tiny 2 or 3 inch tall little munchkin looking dudes. They were like these little trolls, and they were anywhere from 1.5 feet to 2 foot tall, 2.5 foot tall. And people would see them. Now, in particular, there was a woman named Veronica who encountered these things, and we're going to get into their stories. First and foremost, it was Carlito. He was told to bring him a bag of oranges, and then he was supposed to bring him curdled milk, and then he had to do this every Tuesday, and then he had to go back on Saturday, and he was supposed to do it for 3 weeks. Now, the problem was that Saturday he was supposed to be there, which basically was Friday night at midnight. He couldn't be late, but he had a job where he worked in a bar as a bouncer. And so, these are poor people, money's tight. He can't just go, hey, Jefe, I got to go and take this witch doctor some curdled milk and a set of left-handed golf clubs. And, you know what I mean? Like, let's do this, right? So then the dude also asked him some very random specific things, like he needed a set of AA batteries. And I mean, it was weird stuff, And I remember what else all he saw. He had to cut off some of his hair and give it to him, which that binds you to the witch, because now they can do stuff to you. So his brother was like, at first he was like, okay, and he went along with it. But then he missed one time. He was late. He got there at like 12:20 or something like that. And he said, that's going to cost you. Well, where he had gotten bit, his leg swelled up. And it got so bad, he went to the hospital and they drained it, and there was all this fluid and stuff, pus, whatever. He goes, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. It wasn't venom. So it was like it had gotten infected. So he goes back out there and he says, what the hell's going on? And he says, hey, I told you to be here at this time. And instead, you're doing what you want to do. And so the guy was very testy and Eduardo told him, why don't we just do everything your way? You know what I mean? And let's see how it works. So after the second week of this ridiculous, getting almonds and nuts or whatever it was and oranges, and he was like, he tells his brother, he's like, this is bullcrap, like, why am I doing this? And his brother tells him, he says, look, you need to follow what he says, because if you don't, it could be catastrophic. And so his brother just said, mentiras, way, I'm not going to do this. And he didn't go back. Well, this is the first of many stories about this guy that I was told. That particular brother got on a motorcycle, had a wreck, and lost his leg. But it wasn't the venomous leg. It was the other leg. From the knee down, he had to have it amputated, and then the venomous leg pussed up and got real bad, got infected, and they had to take it off. So now this dude is wheelchair bound. So this dude took everything from him. At least that's what they think. Now, that would be the end of the story, right? The rest of the guy's life, he just has to be whatever. No, this guy started complaining to his neighbors and to his mother and anybody that would listen that these little diminutive, dopey-looking creatures, like the way he described them, like slopey, dopey faces, and they had these really long, floppy ears and big noses, and they were coming into his house at night, and they were taking things from him. And that, like, even when he would eat, like, he was literally on his computer, and this is not an old story. This is like in 2015. He was on a computer, and he was doing whatever. This was long after this guy had been run out of town, right? And he said, I was working on my computer. This is what he told Marco. And he said, I turn around and my sandwich had a torta. You know what that is? And he said, turn around and it's rotten. It's molded. Like it had been there for days. And this was something that they did. And then he would see one of them peeking around the corner and then it would run. And he would never fully see them, like he wouldn't see them full on. Now we go to this other woman, Veronica, same thing. Her daughter had an illness. I think it was like measles or mumps or something. It was something, that we would be, you don't think about it here in the States. You get these vaccinations. It's,
it's a thing of the past.
Whatever. But down there, it's not, they're born without any kind of whatever. So she takes his daughter and she's like, she's dying. She's not able to get, and I can't remember what they didn't know exactly what it was. It was a type of illness that was pretty treatable here. And he says, okay, so he rubbed some sort of like animal fat, like beef tallow on her legs and said, she'll be fine. And then he blew like, not vodka, tequila. Yeah. On the little girl, and she quit crying and then she healed up. And then he told her, he says, you need to bring me these little wooden crosses, every Thursday. And there again, it was weird, a bag of pennies or something, but they had to be American pennies. And so she couldn't fulfill whatever it was because the third thing was something like she had to go get duck feathers or something weird. I think it was a goose, something like that.
I think he was making these tasks difficult.
He was making them on purpose. That's what I think. And so whenever these people, it was like a sucker's deal. So she runs all over the place doing this ridiculous, scavenger hunt, and it doesn't work out ever. And so at this point I told Marco, I said, so what did they do? And he's like, well, I'll tell you. Eventually people got tired of this crap, right? So then he would do things like give people this nasty pond, mossy looking water to drink, and it would heal them, like one lady, she had stomach cancer. He gave her this nasty water. She drank it. She used the restroom. She defecated black goo, not like, regular whatever. And for like 2 or 3 days. And then she was like right as the mail. She had no more cancer. She was cured, stuff like that. People who were blind go to him and then they could see. He could do these things. But the problem was it always came with a price, and it always ended up with them being haunted by these little diminutive creatures. And so he developed the name of the Duende King. If you go to the Duende King, like, he'll heal you, but it'll also kill you. And I think they had like a little poem. I don't know how they say it in Spanish, but it was like, the Duende King, your heart will sing on the morrow. There'll be sorrow. And it was something like, you'll be on the mend, and then his wounds he'll tend, you'll be on the mend. What will heal you will now kill you. Like that's the poem. There was like this rhyme or song. And he said, when I was a kid, we would sing this, and only the real desperate poor people would go to this guy. And he goes, I can't think of one instance where it actually worked out. One guy went there because he was suffering from, like his hair was falling out, alopecia. And the guy he went there. And of course, this dude ended up turning him into like a chia pet. His whole body just ended up with hair all over it. And it was because he couldn't follow the instructions. And it was really weird stuff. Like you have to chew chicle at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like just weird stuff. Bring me some elderberries. And I don't know. I'm just making that up. But
just random off the wall
random
crap.
stuff. Yeah. That you would not go bring me a bobcat throw rug, from the Mercado. Like, who's got that? And so they could never fulfill, they're thinking, okay, it's kind of like the devil with interest,
Bring me a Mickey Mantle rookie card.
Yeah.
Bonus Wagner signed
Katie
baseball.
Maldonado's got one. He played for the Indians for years. See if he'll give it to you.
Or it's like the depiction of Moses on South Park. I require macaroni pictures.
Macaroni pictures. Don't worship Hammon, which Hammon is a form of Baal. But so anyways, this guy was giving these people like these impossible tasks, and everybody was just like, eventually a lot of people got together, like family members of these people who had suffered. Some of them had died. One guy was working in a factory in Maquiladore in the north, and like something shot off and like knocked out his eye and cut part of his face open. Stuff like that, and stuff would happen to their relatives and loved ones too. Like he wasn't just into hurting the people themselves. And so everybody began to get upset. And so in the mid 90s, they went to, the local magistrates and said, look, man, this guy, he's got to go. But some of those people had their own dealings with this guy, and they were apprehensive about arresting him. And so everybody was afraid of him, and everybody was terrified of what could happen. Now, there was one police officer named Alvarado who actually went and tried to challenge this guy and effect an arrest. And the next night after he had gone in there and served him the papers and tried to get this guy, whatever, his house burned down and his wife died. So that happened, years ago. So everybody was like scared of this dude. So nobody would do anything. But eventually enough people in that little village outside of this town went in, and they just went in like a mob of them, like 40, 50 people, and they made him come out and they beat him and they burned his house down. Now, according to the stories and the reports, everybody who was involved in that had begun to be haunted by these little diminutive creatures. And according to what we were told by Marco, him and his brother that told us this story, they said when eventually happened was this guy began going into these people's houses one by one at night. And they knew that it was him because it looked like him, but they could see through him like he was a ghost. And his eyes were green, like an emerald glowing green. And this one lady claimed that she had seen him. This was that Veronica lady. There was her, and there was another one named Martha. But they worked together at the place. They showed shoes in the marketplace. And these two women had both had some issues, with stomach problems. Like they had, and so they don't know if it was something, the chemical they were using to treat the leather or something for years and years. Their husbands had worked together and they died. And then those two were sick. And of course, the one woman got healed. So she told Martha, hey, go to this guy. And she's like, the Duende King? I'm not going to that dude. And she's like, he'll heal you. And her task was relatively simple. But whatever it was, one of the things she was told to get was like some kind of oil. And she couldn't find it. Like all of a sudden that she couldn't find it anywhere. So then she defaulted on the deal. And then, of course, she started having these nightmares. Well, Martha had already gone to him. He healed her. Same thing happened to her. She released this toxin or goo, whatever it was, out of her body. And then these duendes started appearing because neither one of them could find this particular oil. And and it was something that was used to like treat leather or something like that, I believe. And so whenever they couldn't find it, he told them, well, so sorry, so sad, this is too bad, And so they ended up like, horrified because they started getting these boils on the backs of their hands. Blisters developed on the bottoms of their feet and inside their palms. And they couldn't work. And they kept having this swelling of the eyes. And they would see these little creatures popping up in their house, little brown, diminutive little creatures. Now, these creatures go back before the Spaniards. Some of the Spanish monks actually documented these creatures after they had arrived in the New World, after the conquest and everything was complete. Then the monks came and they were all like, they were like Commodus on Gladiator. Have I missed it? Have I missed the battle? And Cortez is like, you've missed the whole war. I mean, where have you been? No, I was busy worshiping in the monastery. It was horrible. At one point, we were almost out of fava beans. I'm just so glad I'm here. Thank goodness you guys are safe. We've been praying. And they're like, oh, well, thanks. And then they're like, so what do we do? What do we do? What do we have to do? It's not dangerous, right? And they're like, no, it's not dangerous, you fat little monks. Go ahead and go out there and torture the natives. Oh, okay, cool. We got that. We got their defenses, right? Yeah, their defenses. Okay, cool. I thought you were going to make us do something for real. Good thing. You better be in church and give us money or you're in trouble. Yeah, we know. So they would go out there and they would be absolutely useless, and they would, literally torture people, and what they did, and so they had this one monk who had literally been in that area, and he was notorious for being a very, very bad guy. And supposedly, according to the story that the Duende King told, he had a magic stone inside of a necklace. And it was a ruby, and it had been taken from the mines of Spain. There were years ago, like back when the Iberian Celts had been enslaved by the Romans, and this thing was in his family for a long time. And his name was like Jorge Diaz or something like that. And I think that's what he said his name was. I got to look. But I think that was his name. It was something Diaz. And so what this guy was known for was being a liar, being a fraud, just an all-around villain. But this bloodstone, as the Duende King called it, Eduardo, he said that his grandfather had wrested it from him. Now, this was his grandfather, right? But supposedly, he took it from him back in the 1500s. Yeah. So he said that this stone had been in his family for a long time. And so whenever he pulled the stone out and he was being beaten by the mob, he lifted it up and it blinded them, and then he disappeared. He just vanished. So maybe, just maybe, there was some sort of whatever to this. Now, there were some guys back in the 80s who had tried to rob him. They came in, these bandidos, and they tried to steal that gold amulet with the stone in there. And according to him, he had these two pet turtles. Those were the robbers, like he had, and he taped the pictures of their corpses to the back of these turtles. And he said, these two are the guys that tried to rob me. Now, get this. This story gets really weird. According to what Marco told me, he says after he disappeared, those turtles were no longer there, and there were these two naked men who had been missing. And they told a weird story about just going into this black realm and just being asleep. Like they were pushed into like a black room. Yeah. They were just asleep. And so they admitted that the last thing they remembered was going there to rob this guy. And after that, they don't remember. Well, the Duende King was very upfront about it. He told people, he goes, I threw magic oil on them and they disappeared. But these items that he was always asking for, and I have a theory about this because of what I was told, that is something that people say when they enter into these agreements with the Duende. Sometimes they're asked for certain things, and they're given like a magic flute, or they're given like a certain bone that can do things. If they throw it, they can find gold and things like that. Like this one lady who had told a story, she was from Guadalajara. And this pertains to this. She said that she was in a park, and this little person about a foot tall came up to her and told her, if you give me a kiss, I'll give you this magic bone. And she knew that this was some sort of little demonic entity, but she's like, I was a drunk, and she was also a prostitute. And so she did, and he gave her this bone. He says, throw it 3 times, you'll be rich. And she found gold nuggets that were like, almost like a half a pound each every time she threw it. After the 3rd time she threw it, her hair fell out, all of her hair on her head, and then she couldn't make any money, so she needed the gold. Of course, she had this wealth. And she claims that this was not a story told to me, but this was a third person, whatever. But she claimed, that, according to the story that I was sent on Messenger, that she went and took this gold, and then she bought a house and she moved way out into the country, but her beauty was gone and she was hideous. And then her feet became so mangled and her toenails would grow really fast overnight. and she had to cut them constantly. She could barely walk, and she got really fat, and eventually she just died in that mansion alone. And so everything that all the deals that they make, everything that they do, it comes with this heavy price that ends up basically screwing you.
It's like Wishmaster.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with these people, these beings, whatever they are. And so this guy, he claimed that he got this magic amulet, and with that magic amulet that was worn by Jorge Diaz, the Franciscan monk, apparently this guy who got this amulet was his grandfather. Now, his grandfather passed on the wisdom to him because his dad was considered weak, and he was killed by him and his grandfather. He was pushed off a cliff by some Mayan ruins, right? Because he was considered to be a Mayan. They were Mayan descended people. And he said, we went up to the hill. He goes, I was 11 years old. I went up the hill with my grandfather, and we shoved him off of the cliff, or I did, at the behest of my grandfather as a sacrifice. So Kukulkan would reward us with eternal life. He says, and my grandfather now, he was still alive, but in a form of stasis, according to what he told local people, and that this mummified corpse was actually just a body that was not dead, and that his grandfather could move around and go around, and his spirit would come to him and tell him who was doing what they were supposed to be doing, who wasn't, whatever. Well, the lady Martha had gone to church and was begging the priest for help. She said that the Duende King had put a curse on her. She needed help, blah, blah, blah. And they basically laughed at her and told her to leave. But then she took a photo of what looks like a ghost. Now, I don't have this photo, but it looks, because this guy wore a cowboy hat, and it looks like him with green glowing eyes and a cowboy hat, and you can see him wearing the amulet. And she took it back to the priest, and they were like, wow, what is that? Well, one of the priests began to suspect that there was more to this because he began to do the research and he began to figure it out. And he said, dude, everybody who's encountered this guy has had problems. Well, some of them have even died. So he knew that there was something to this, and it was a bad deal. And so he figured out that he needed to try to get in contact with some of these people, and he wanted to help them. He wanted to do what was right. And so he wanted them to have holy water to protect themselves because they were being preyed upon by this guy. And not only was this guy able to summon these duendes to attack people, one guy got his toe bitten off by one of these creatures. There was another guy who had a pencil or something shoved into his ear while he slept. It punctured his eardrum. They were doing horrible things. One guy got the tip of his nose bitten off. So this guy, he started appearing in people's houses. And one guy, he only went by the name of, the guy only gave me the name of Ramirez. He went by something else, but Ramirez woke up with this dude actually drinking blood from his arm with this Eduardo guy. And this was supposedly something that he asked from people regularly. Like, okay, he would ask all of these different items you had to get him, but then he always wanted blood. And he would actually keep it around mixed with wine, and he would drink it, and nobody ever saw him eating anything either. So this man very well may have been some sort of vampiric entity too. And so you had like these duendes that were always trolled around him. You know, sometimes people would go into his little adobe hut where he would do the magic and stuff. And he had a house right there behind it, but he was rarely there. He was always in his little hut. And these duendes sometimes you could hear them singing, laughing, dancing, and playing around. And you would walk by his house and you could see them looking out the windows. And it was creepy. And then they would growl at people, snarl. And then sometimes they would see them in the yard, you know, like running toward them up to the fence. He had these wrought iron fence around the yard where it looked like they couldn't get past it. You know what I mean? And he would tell people that would come to him and complain about the duendes attacking them. He would give them a piece of iron and he would tell them to say this prayer and say it backwards 3 times, and it would protect them, and to hang the iron up from the doorways. Well, most people have more than one doorway. They would protect them from that particular doorway. And then if they wanted help, then more help, he would charge them.
And why would you need to say a prayer backwards?
Yeah. And then he wanted money. And it always came down to give me more money. And so this guy, he was doing what he would do, but then he would disappear. Like in the middle of the summer when it would get really hot, he would just be gone and nobody would see him for 2 or 3 months. And he would claim at that time he would travel down to South America where it was cooler and he would be staying there, right? So when he disappeared, a lot of people believed that he had gone to Argentina. And this is what they were saying, that the prevailing theme was that he had disappeared and he was gone. And eventually he started showing up in people's dreams, or if you want to call them dreams, nightmares. With women, he would be like molesting them, like laying on top of them, trying to, have coitus. And then with men, he would be drinking their blood or punching and kicking them, biting them. Same thing with women. He'd be biting them, but he's also trying to, have intercourse with them and doing these horrible things. People would wake up screaming. And he bit this one woman, like a part of her face, like by her left side of her mouth, he pulled part of her face off, with a bite. And he would have these big, long teeth, and he looked like a vampire. And so this whole legend developed around this guy. And I don't know what to think of it. I don't know his last name. I just know they called him Eduardo. And he was known as the Duende King, and that's what Marco had told us, and said that it was a big problem, down there for a while, and that this guy had all this power over these people. And in particular, this little village that was outside of Candelaria. I don't even know the name of the village because it's really not there anymore. Like these people, he poisoned everybody. Like basically, they all went and spread out and went back into the cities, the towns. There's 13 municipalities in Campeche, and that's where they went and they got out of there, and that area was cursed. And eventually, the state, of Campeche, like they bulldozed it over and just kind of like erased it because they didn't want to hear about they didn't want the history of it. It was bad. But to this day, supposedly, he shows up periodically. Most recently, there was a parade in 2011, I believe they said, in Candelaria, and which is to celebrate their being given an independent municipality by the country of Mexico, where they were once an independent state because it was predominantly Mayan. And so he showed up. And there were people dancing as these people would when they would do the human sacrifice and stuff to Colcocan. And there was a guy there. He was about 7 foot tall. And he was dressed like Kukulkan. And they were like, that's Eduardo. Like he's, so who knows what his origin really is? Was his grandfather around since the days of the Mayans? And was he the grandson of one of these guys? Because he claims that his grandfather was a very powerful sorcerer who actually worked for one of the Mayan kings. Now, the Mayans they didn't have like one overall emperor. They had a bunch of different, principalities, not municipalities, principalities, and they all were kind of independent, like the Greek city-states. Yeah. But then they would work together to fight, And so I remember before the Mandela effect that they had fought the Aztecs on multiple occasions, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh no, they were gone long before the Aztecs, but yet they're still around. What? Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Mandela effect. Thank you. But it's a very bizarre, weird thing. Now, remember we were talking about, and this is a weird stuff. We'll talk about it on the live stream. Remember we were talking about the guys that were dressed like demons on Halloween, in the parking garage. Uh-huh. That's a story we were trying to tell for the show, whatever. But yeah, it was by what's his name, Malik from Sudan. Mm-hmm. And so that story was really weird. Like he witnessed something that and Anthony, you were like, hey, this may happen more often. We'll talk about that on the live stream. But so you have this weird, story that was given to me. Now, I don't know how much of it is completely true, or maybe it's just part of it's true or all of it's true. But, I interviewed 2 different people for it, actually 3. And they all said the same thing. They seem to believe this is real. Yeah. And this woman, Martha, who claimed that, she was healed by him and then later she went partially blind, and then she, got her eyesight back. She's very devout, very Christian. And believe it or not, like she's got the Saint Benedict, and the visitation stopped. And at one point he came into her room and she put it on his forehead and he left. Is the Duende King a vampire? Does he have control or does he have power with these duendes? I don't know. I mean,
at the very least, enough of the story is true for it to have a profound effect on the people around him. Mm-hmm. On an entire village. It's just, they just migrated out of there, and there's nothing left now because of him.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Tony? I mean, your thoughts?
I am very interested in like the dichotomy of how they, because like we obviously name them things and like can call them witches or warlocks, or like we have our own labels for them. But I wonder like if they view themselves as differently. Like, what you said earlier about like, only good, cool, and deadly is only until you piss it off. But it's like, then it becomes a brujo. But what if it's like, what if this thing, or this Duende King, even though from an outside perspective, and you might look at it and be like, oh, this is a magical dude who does magic. But then what if it's like, okay, but he only deals with duendes. So like his magic is completely different from like demonology, or like what a brujeria or like a witch from somewhere else would deal with. So like that's why you're seeing a lot of this like weird kind of like trickster, kind of like playing a game with you, but it's like it's obviously not a game, because like I don't think like it's to him a game. I think it's like some kind of, the way he has to do it is like his little sets of rules, or his little rituals that you might, his little pentagrams that he carves and symbols that he might have to do. And it might have to do with the fact that because like these duendes, or we'll just call it fae, is like their magic is completely different from what everything else is. So how he interacts with that is completely different, and how he interacts and how he have these kind of stories where it's like it's basically the same, but there's something obviously very different. It's something obviously very like not it's nefarious, but not like in like ooh, I just want to do bad. It's like nefarious in a like, ooh, gotcha. Like, ooh, you made a mistake. You messed up. Like it's a technicality where it's not just like, oh, you're signing yourself away, where it's like, oh, you failed to hold the deal, even though the deal was like a million different things, like like you said,
sucker's deal.
It's like a contract that sets you up to fail.
Exactly. And like, but instead of like where you might think like a demon be like, oh, I'll give you your deepest desires and you give me like the exact thing I want, which screws you over no matter what you desire. It's like these things are him. It's like, you can get what you want. And like, as long as you uphold this, like if you go by this contract, you're good. You get exactly what you want. But it's like, you have to, sacrifice your firstborn 7th child, and say, okay, like, how am I going to remember that? It's very like specific in a way. It's very
intricate.
It's very, it's a very like lawyery, where it's, what is it? When they're like the very by the words and by the law. Oh, what is that? It starts with there's a word for it.
Rigid?
No, it's like
convoluted?
Logistic or
legality?
Yeah, or something like that. But it's like they're very, very into
legalistic.
There's a word that they'll know, and the people understand what I'm talking about, the paratroopers. But yeah, it's very clear that like their focus isn't so much on, I don't know. It's like they're both, I would say like both witches are kind of doing the same thing of getting you to try to give your soul over or get you over in some way. But it's interesting to see the differences in how they do it, where, like a demon might scare you into, accepting it, or it might, just terrorize you in such a way to where you kind of give up on either your faith or yourself, or you just lose your, mentality. Or you just kind of give up on your loved ones, and that kind of isolates you. And they're like very pushing you into like this very dark and very like nefarious, but very clearly like evil. Whereas this thing, it's like very clearly the same kind of scheme, but like, different con men.
The nature of his magic might be the result of like a regional limitation, because these spirits, they claim territory, just like flesh and blood beings do. So his connection to the duende might actually be just because that's what happens to be in his area. So that's what he can tap into, because that's their region. He might have to tailor his magic to dealing with them specifically. And like he might have a deal with them where he provides access to people's lives through this loophole where they give the duendes permission, I guess, to enter their lives, but without them knowing it. It's kind of like a technicality. And in exchange, he maintains access to whatever magic that he's tapping into with them. So it's like a mutually beneficial exchange, but you have to keep providing in order to maintain that access.
Another thing too, and this is the good part about Paranormal Roundtable and listening to the stories from us, not tooting our own horn here, but I'm going to toot. I mean, I go back to like the vampire confession, and the different, like with Joel. So I reached out to Joel. I didn't get a response immediately, but I also reached out to Eve. Remember Eve? Mm-hmm. And what was the other one? We did her show too. Was it Eve that we did her show on her? Was it her, or was it there was a female? I think it was Eve. I think we did hers. I'm not for sure. We got to go back and look. I thought we did hers on the live stream, but anyways, one of my contacts, two of them actually, I reached out, and then Joel got back to me, but Eve got back first. And like I said, folks, I think we did her story on the live stream. But these vampires, if you're on Spotify and you listen to this, you're not in the know. You're not going to know what we're talking about. You're probably lost. But the Vampire Confessions will explain a lot. And then we did a lot of work, like with that Rex Rude jerk. Anyways, that guy, and then we did some work with Charles, who was into lycanthropy, and there were a couple other people. What they were involved in with the Temple of Shay, right? And one of the things that I learned from talking to Eve, and then Joel kind of reiterated it, but then went a little more in depth. They were convinced of what I was telling them, that this guy could very well be a vampire, but there's so many different kinds and so many different fiefdoms. And they said that area. Now get this. This is Eve's first reaction. She said, witchcraft, definitely. Involving the duende, probably. And then she said vampire, maybe. But she said that they all kind of run together. It all kind of goes hand in hand. Like you said, it's a localized thing. Mm-hmm. Now, Joel said this. He said, dude, there are some powerful, powerful magic users down in the Yucatan. They, as a cult species, whatever you want to call them, believe that there was a very powerful volcano or some sort of what do you call that? Natural disaster, like a earthquake, something that had happened there in the Yucatan a long, long time ago. And that whole area came up out of the ocean, and the underworld was brought forth upon the earth. So those duende are just living right there, right below the surface. And those caves go literally deep down into the ground. And then you end up in the underwater kingdom. But these magic practitioners can actually live. They can actually interact with these underwater beings. I forgot what they're called. We've talked about them on the show, so I can't remember the names. But they have a particular name for them. And that's another thing that goes on down there, where they can get this magic from these beings. And when this dude says he goes to Argentina, he can probably walk through the water to go through. It's what Joel said. Whereas most vampires are not able to go and touch salt water. I didn't know that. But he said that that salt water is like poisonous. But this guy probably could do that. And he's probably able to utilize the ability to go into these underwater systems. And if he's been around a long, long time, then he knows all the tricks. And if his grandfather is, one of the original, priests or whatever from the Mayans, I mean, he could be ancient, according to Joel. I know this sounds really crazy, folks. I'm not saying I believe all this. I'm just saying that, we've seen a lot of weird stuff. We just lived in a house where a lot of weird stuff was going on, man. And we're glad to be out of there. Thank God nothing has happened in the place we're at right now, because it started almost immediately in that house and it just went on and on. And I didn't stick around nearly as long as I did in the South Austin house. Thank God. I just was like, I'm not into this. Thank God I got out of there. But we've seen so much. And we've heard so much, and we've interviewed so many people and talked to so many people. We've had them come on the show, tell us these crazy stories, and then, we've retold people's crazy stories. I don't mean they're crazy, but I mean it's weird, right? But these guys and gals that I talked to, they seem to think that this guy was probably real. I mean, and they had heard rumors that there was a powerful mummy. Now, down there in the Yucatan, was that where it was at? Was it in Santos? I think it was called Santos was the name of the place, the village. It's not on a map, and it's not there anymore. But they said that they had heard rumors that there was like this mummy that lived down there in the Yucatan, and he could actually reanimate his body. Now, what happened to the mummified body of his grandfather? I don't know. But supposedly, according to what this guy would take, because he would tell people, and that's another thing they said that Joel said. He goes, you're telling people because it's a legality, because that's where it goes back to what me and Garitano were talking about, how, and Eric Palacios, we talked about this on the show, all of us, where this is all, soft disclosure. When I used to be on with Blondes and Booze, we talked about, that disclosure where basically they're telling you, hey, this is AI, Terminator, Matrix, but yeah, it's real, But this is, the same thing, the Predator, he's cloaking, and we got Dogman, Bigfoot, and what else? Who knows what else doing it? And so you got this weird, these legalities, as Tony, you were talking about it, who knows what these people are capable of? He's not even a person. He's not even really a person. Yeah. Like he might have been a vessel of a person at one time, but what he is now is not that. And this guy is going into their dreams. This was very interesting for Eve. She was talking about how, he was going into their dreams. And that happens, using sex and blood magic to take from people, and killing. Oh, and another thing too, he would kill people's pets. He was killing their pets. He'd wake up, their dog or cat is exsanguinated, and even a couple people died, and they couldn't figure out what had happened, why, how. Now there was this being that was being seen roaming around the jungle with a human head, and it was a spider-like being. And now, most recently we got a story from somebody, one of the listeners I showed you, Anthony, about that spider-like thing with the wolf head. It was very weird. Haven't told that one yet, but this being that was seen, and of course it had the look of that mummy, like the face. This thing was crawling around and chasing people in the jungle. Shortly after that mummy went missing. But there were also a couple different people in the town that were very close to this guy, and they would probably help him. They were probably like his helpers, and not to mention he was getting help from the like, as Tony called them, the Fae, like the Duendes. And so this guy was tapping into that. He had a very powerful magic. Now, did it come from Diaz's amulet? The guy they called Diaz, if that guy was real, the monk. Did he get that amulet, and did his grandfather use it to rise up or whatever? But he was already considered a sorcerer, medicine man from the Mayans. Did he kill someone and take it? I mean, who knows? Who knows? And then he gets it, and then he uses it. He called it a bloodstone. Now, that stone, you kill someone and you fill a diamond with blood. Now that's another magic ritual that's talked about in a lot of these nasty magic books. I've read this. I know that this is something, and then people to this day, that when they talk about it, this guy lives in LA now. One of the guys I was talking to, Marco, and he said, dude, I was talking to you about it. And then the next day I had a nightmare. Oddly enough, right after I'd interviewed him, I had a weird thing happen. Nellie claimed to have seen like this shadow entity standing by my bed looking down at me. Remember when the mask
Yeah, it kept coming off.
Yeah, because I have a breathing mask, and everybody's like, he has sleep apnea, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, when you are a big guy, that's what happens. Also, powerlifters tend to get it too. And so, if you're fat or muscular or both, you probably have sleep apnea. But yeah, so what? My enemies were like, you have sleep apnea. I'm like, yeah, and you're also dumb as shit. So, I mean, I guess we're even. But somebody was tearing my mask off at night, and I wondered, like, right after I got this story, it was pretty bizarre. Like, I had some weird things happen, and I heard this weird noise, like somebody was singing in some sort of, like, weird language when I was outside. And you remember you heard that weird shrieking noise, too, right on the same time. But anyway, weird story. I don't know what to make of it. I saved this one up for Halloween time because I thought it's a creepy one. I mean, it really is. But hopefully this villain is long, long away from us. So anyways, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranormal Roundtable. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your parents, your family, your friends, tell everybody about us. Tell them that there's this guy, goes by the name of Wolf. He's really awesome. He's got these two goobers that hang out with him and kind of distract from everything. But, other than that, it's a good show.
Yeah, Tony and Banjo.
Yeah. Anthony, Tony, Banjo.
You want to say something here, sir?
3 of y'all.
You want to mention? You're going to let him talk trash about you like that?
Banjo's just like, get off me, son. I'm trying to sleep.
You're the hardest working one here. He's talking trash about
It'd be funny
you.
if he just started growling at Tony and bit him.
You would have had those technical problems on Sunday, right, buddy? I bet you would have had it handled.
Yeah. He probably handled it better than you. All right, guys. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Keep your head on the swivel if you're down in the Yucatan. Good night.